Hey, hey.
Hello, hello.
Oh, you're clipped again.
All right. Really? For real?
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
I don't know what just happened. Michael sounded great 30 seconds ago when we tested his audio, and all of a sudden it.
No, I was just loud. I was just talking
Here-
loud. I think
There
when I
it is.
start talking, but yeah, we're good.
There it is. Hello.
Yeah.
That was a very awkward intro there. Sorry. Yeah. No, you sound great.
Mhm.
I might sound okay, but I'm not doing okay. I don't know. Some people know that I got the coup finally.
Mhm.
Took them 3 years for the CCP to enter my bloodstream, but they finally did it. So I'm on day 7. I'm not in horrible shape, but I'm definitely kind of sick. And
Yeah.
so now that I'm sick and experienced COVID, I think everyone should mask, and I think we should stop society entirely, lock down everything, because it's just a terrible. No, I actually. No, I still think masking is ridiculous, and I still think that the lockdowns are very bad policy. But I do think that our side on this. We just got banned from YouTube, didn't we?
Well, it's funny. We made this same conversation last week, and how crazy is it that like we're afraid to talk about this topic when we're really just talking about your personal experience with the disease this last week, right?
Well,
Yeah.
no, I am making some policy prescriptions
True.
here, but yeah.
Yeah, but
No. I don't know. I think there's always been an odd contradiction on our side, which is that we've been correct that COVID is not that bad, and therefore doesn't require all these extraordinary measures, and masking doesn't work, and and lockdowns don't work, and sure. However, we could have a pandemic. We could have a virus that absolutely does require locking down society, I think, and maybe requires wearing N95 masks. That seems totally possible to me. So our side, I think, is kind of dropping the ball now, because we've won that debate. We've won the debate about how severe COVID was, which is really what it boiled down to. But people are not paying attention to the real point, which is that this was almost certainly man-made, created in a lab, and that the lab was almost certainly funded and managed by two governments, the Chinese and the American governments. And actors like that, governments who are engaged in bioweapons research, can most certainly unleash another virus that can kill many more people and can be dangerous to all of us, and could require us to truly lock down society for an indefinite period and destroy lives permanently, just from the lockdown. So we need to be focused 100%, no longer on how stupid masks are, but on stopping this from happening in the future. Yeah.
I'm gonna push back
Okay.
the same way I did last week. But here's my point with this: is like I think at this point everybody agrees that the last 2-3 years was an overreaction to something.
Mm-hmm.
Can we try an underreaction next time this happens?
Not if my face is falling off from some virus, some rogue virus that comes out of a lab. What do you mean? Like, isn't it possible that there could be a virus that would make you wear an N95 and keep you in your house?
It's possible, and I'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Okay.
But again, when the news comes out and everybody's scared and there's a lot of chaos and the facts aren't completely solid, I think that people's instinct should be to err on the side of freedom, or to at least get out of the way of those who do want to be free.
Sure. Again, I just think that it's totally possible, once again, that bioweapons researching governments could unleash a virus that is as deadly as the COVIDians have claimed COVID was, and could force us all to take extraordinary measures that do radically limit our freedoms. I mean, and so everyone needs to be paying attention to the Wuhan lab, to the NIH, to Fauci, to Eco Health Alliance. This thing that almost certainly created the damn thing in the first place, so that we can stop it in the future. Again, people miss the point often in these debates and these issues. That the big point is that it's not It's not that COVID wasn't so bad and therefore we didn't need to mask up. It's that this thing was created by fucking governments and they could do it again in a much worse way. And so let's get to the bottom of that. And by the way, have the Republicans begun doing the oversight investigations in the Congress about this?
Not about this, but they've started their oversight investigations on the most important thing in the world, which is Twitter.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. You want to talk about that?
Well, we can right now, but I think it's funny. Like, you were talking about how much you anticipated these oversight committees being such a huge thing for years and years and years.
I did.
And the first thing that they talk about in the first oversight committee that they hold is on the Twitter files.
Yes. Speaking of missing the point, and so I'm just truly annoyed, or I don't know, worse with the Republicans who are doing this. Yeah, they hauled the Twitter executives before Congress again and dressed them down very publicly. But what I've seen and heard in those hearings is mostly Jim Jordan and Lauren Boebert and all these people screaming at Yoel Roth and what's her face Gaddy about how terrible they were for taking the FBI's instructions. I mean, I don't even need to tell the Twitter executives anything. They're a private company. I don't need to shame them. I don't see how that's going to do anybody any good. It's, to me, completely simple. There should be a law banning any agency of the federal government from requesting censorship from any media outlet. It should be a law that no federal agency or actor or state, any government, can interfere in any way with social media with media outlets in general. This is, Operation Mockingbird of the CIA, begun in the 50s or 60s, was a coordinated, still going on, coordinated program for the CIA to funnel, to basically tell the media what to report on. And this is how the JFK assassination got covered up. The FBI went straight to every newspaper in the country and told them, do not say it was a conspiracy. Do not suggest that it was anything other than a lone gunman. And all the newspapers did it. And this is why for decades, no one knew what the hell was going on with the JFK assassination, or everyone just assumed it was just Lee Harvey Oswald. That's really what this is. This is the FBI doing the same thing. It's not part of Operation Mockingbird, as far as I know, but it's the exact same kind of thing, where the federal government is going to these outlets and saying, hey, you know what? You should really not report this, or you should report this, or you should censor this person or that thing. That should be illegal. And that's all the Republicans should be doing right now, is making that illegal. And so I think they are a terrible disappointment. And also, I guess it just shows that they are of the establishment too. Even these MAGA firebrands are not really challenging the power of the federal government, right? Because that's who they are. They are now the federal government. So why would they want to restrict themselves? There will come a day when Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jim Jordan want to, guess what? Probably censor media outlets for different issues. And so that's probably why they don't want the government to restrict itself in that way.
Yeah. Man, this leads into everything else.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Like, Republicans are calling for obscenity laws already. Yeah. I mean, not officially on Congress. I haven't seen that yet, but I've definitely seen that at the state level and on Twitter a lot. But I brought this up because, like, at least you see Lauren Boebert and others grilling Twitter execs because they feel so personally hurt that their personal Twitter accounts were suspended. And that's the great injustice in all of this, is that this narcissism that social media bleeds, that the most important thing in the world, that the first thing we have to address is why aren't I getting more attention on social media?
Right. Yeah, I saw Boebert almost screaming at the Twitter execs and saying, demanding to know whether they personally authorized her shadow banning. Did you personally shadow ban me? And then she says, I'm not mad for myself. I'm mad for my constituents and for the American people who have been denied information. No, I don't think so, honey. But again, the problem is not that Yoel Roth and Twitter censored people. It's that they did so at the behest of the federal government. And so who do we focus on? here. We don't focus on the evil liberals running Twitter. We should be focusing on the federal government.
Yeah.
And stopping them from that.
Yeah, I think, again, I think the Republicans, if they were smart, would be hiring really, really good constitutional lawyers to adjudicate all this, because, again, the First Amendment is incredibly, incredibly clear. And any time that the government is doing something to impede freedom of speech, it's because they were authorized to do so by Congress. So you need a lawyer to point out where that authorization came from and then create a case and bring that to the Supreme Court.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the First Amendment was written with precisely this kind of thing in mind, to stop the government from interfering in speech.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So because of that, there's this freshman congressman. Did you see Maxwell Frost?
Oh, is that the really young guy?
Yeah, he's the young guy. I'm not sure if he's the youngest ever, but I think he's the youngest currently in Congress.
From Florida?
And, yeah, from Florida.
Yeah.
And he sort of made that point. And as a Democrat, he was kind of able to win some good political points for that. So this is what he said.
Why are folks on this committee so obsessed with Twitter's editorial decision on Hunter Biden's laptop? Would they hold the same hearings of the editorial decisions of Fox News and Newsmax? Free speech is about the government limiting speech around about the public. My governor, Ron DeSantis, is doing that right now. I have a venue in my district that he's revoking the liquor license of, trying to close because they had a drag show. We have teachers who are not able to teach the curriculum that they want because they disagree with Ron DeSantis and his view of the world. That is limiting free speech. And I'd love to see this committee bring in some of these governors who are abusing their power, like Governor DeSantis in my state of Florida, to limit the free speech of people. I yield back. Why are folks...
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the DeSantis stuff. So I think this guy's correct about the drag show. Was it a bar or nightclub that got its liquor license revoked? I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's pretty clearly a violation of the First Amendment. But most of what DeSantis has done, as far as I know, has been to restrict the speech of government employees, namely teachers, right? Public school teachers. And last I checked, I mean, the state has every right to control, I mean, according to its own rules, has every right to limit any speech, conducted by federal employees or government employees, state employees. This is something people forget. I mean, the left just doesn't understand this at all. They're just sort of like, it's public education. We should be allowed to say anything we want when we're teaching in classes, when we're being paid by the government, when we're being paid by tax money. No, sorry. If you're going to make it public education, then the public gets to decide what the education is. But that's a separate issue. Yes, the Republicans are hypocrites. This is true. And they definitely want to restrict a whole lot of speech. Josh Hawley, Mr. MAGA firebrand, a couple of years ago, maybe less than a couple of years ago, called for an outright ban on pornography. That's back. That's back in the news. That's now an agenda item for a lot of Republicans. And yeah, I mean, the stuff around alleged grooming and stuff, this has led to Republicans calling for all sorts of bans on speech. Although I think it's mostly though, I will say they've called for limiting the speech of public school teachers, which, hey, if they're going to be public, of course, government has the right to do that. So
yeah. So I was again on my distracting YouTube rabbit holes that one again on David Allan Coe, the country singer, and he was institutionalized for 20 plus years. And
was he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And one of the charges he got was for an obscenity law. And he had, it was possession of obscene materials, I believe. And he got 6.5 years for having 2 pictures of naked women inside of his wallet.
Naked women?
Yeah.
Like adult women?
He said he used the word women. Yes. So yeah. I assume they were grown. Yeah.
20 years. Well, when was that?
Oh, that would have to be the 40s and 50s.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, so the Brandenburg decision of the Supreme Court, I believe, was in the 60s. Mm-hmm. Someone can check that, but I'm pretty sure it was in the mid 60s. That's the last major Supreme Court First Amendment decision. And it was a very good one. Even for me, even a total free speech absolutist like me, which is that Supreme Court has been very clear in Brandenburg and in subsequent decisions that the only speech that can be restricted is either a direct threat, or a direct threat. That's it. Yeah. So basically, anything else goes according to the Supreme Court. I think that was a case involving a Ku Klux Klansman, and they said, "Yep, everything goes." You know, he was calling for, I think he was calling for death to minority groups, but not in a specific way. And they said that that's actually protected as well, unless he had called out a particular individual and said, "Joe Smith, everyone should go lynch him tonight." So it's actually our First Amendment regime is actually, I think, quite awesome. I think the Supreme Court is really good on this. I think the current state of the law is what I think just about any one of us would like. So I have for years and years just not understood why we still have a First Amendment in this country, given the culture that I see of Americans around this, that all sides pretty much, except for maybe libertarians and a handful of principled liberals, they are so censorious. You know, not a day goes by when you don't have some political person calling for censorship. I really don't. I don't know why the First Amendment still is the law of the land. You know, because I think there's very little support for it actually among Americans. I think a very small minority of Americans are actually free speech absolutists, the way the First Amendment suggests. What do you think? Do you think that's true?
Oh yeah, totally. There's well, here's the thing. Everybody nominally is in support of the First Amendment. Like, they want the moral high ground of supporting the Bill of Rights and the Constitution.
Right.
And the idea of free speech, but nobody understands the legal implications of that. And nobody has a good understanding of constitutional law and what that actually means. And everybody wants to censor something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't get it. I really don't know why we still have a First Amendment. It's got to be less than 1%, I would think, of Americans who are true free speech absolutists.
Yeah.
Who agree with the spirit of the First Amendment.
I think it's just still there because people are too lazy to put forth a concerted effort to go after it. The Supreme Court, stands on stare decisis most of the time, and it's a lot easier to just let the law be what it is and keep enforcing the system as it currently exists than it is to get 2/3 of Congress or something major to overturn something like that.
Yeah, well, again, though, I still don't know why the political class has allowed it to stand, and I don't allow. I don't know why it's allowed the Brandenburg decision to stand, and they've honored it because no ruling class benefits from freedom of speech. That's never a good thing for a ruling class, I don't think. I've been predicting for a long time that we will have.
I know why, but I know why now. Go ahead.
Oh, well, okay. Please don't forget that.
Yeah.
I've been predicting for a while that we're going to have European hate speech laws in my lifetime. I think that might even be, within the next few years. Seems to be where we're headed. But I've been saying that for a long time, and it hasn't happened. Thank God. But again, I don't get it. So why is it that a ruling class or this ruling class would want to maintain the First Amendment as it is?
Yeah, I'm about to make an argument for those local obscenity laws again.
Oh, cool.
But yeah. So it's just like Roe versus Wade, right? Like Roe versus Wade might have increased all of the freedom out there in the world by keeping local governments out of abortion, but it established that the federal government are the ones who decide for women's bodies.
Right.
So basically, the federal government are the ones who decide what speech is allowed because the First Amendment is precedent. So federal lawmakers still say you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, and they still arrest people for certain reasons, and they still tell big tech to go after misinformation, and they still censor in ways that they can, but they like the First Amendment because it's the supremacy of the federal government. And for you Brian McClanahan fans out there and your constitutional nerds, it says Congress shall make no law banning speech. It doesn't say Ron DeSantis shall make no law. So, if you really believe in the Constitution and the system of federalism we have, local governments should have the right to make their own laws about speech.
Yeah, nice. Yes. Right. The federal government has retained its sovereignty over speech.
Yes.
Right. Just as it did with the Roe v. Wade decision. And again, I've said this a few times before, but everyone should please go read the Roe v. Wade decision. And regardless of your position on abortion and whether it should be legal, every conservative should be 100% opposed to the language of the Roe v. Wade decision, apart from abortion, because that decision states that the state, it says, actually uses the term the state retains its sovereignty over the bodies of its citizens. It's very creepy and Orwellian, but it really shows you what the state is all about. The state holds sovereignty not just over this land, over this space, but over your individual body. And if you want to kill yourself, the state can stop you from doing that. That's the logic. That's the reasoning behind making suicide illegal. Although nowadays, I guess I haven't really followed this, but apparently in Canada, the government of Canada is somehow encouraging euthanasia. But so it's a little bit confusing to me, but it doesn't matter. If the state wants you dead, the state can have you dead. If it wants to keep you alive, it can force you to stay alive. And if you're a woman, it has declared sovereignty, even in the Roe v. Wade decision, has declared sovereignty over a woman's reproductive abilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we covered that issue about Canada a few weeks ago, or about a couple months ago. Yeah.
Well, we talked about it a little bit, but I still I haven't researched it enough. I don't really understand what's happening. I just know that a lot of conservatives are freaking out about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think euthanasia should be completely legal. I think suicide should be completely legal. It's shocking to me that's even debatable. But, I also certainly don't want the government encouraging anybody to off themselves.
Well, this is the thing, right? To rehash this point, Canada has socialized medicine, right? So if the state realizes that it would be cheaper to kill you than it would be to pay for your treatment, they'll encourage you, and they'll show you all the options that you have and encourage you to go forward with euthanasia.
Modern governance, Foucault taught us, is about the management of life, not the threat of death. He said that the pre-modern regimes, governments, they basically controlled populations by threatening to kill people or to torture them or to put them in prison, right? And with the modern era, Foucault says, governments have been much more interested in managing our bodies, managing our psyches, and using us and using the population, the bodies of the population, for its own purposes. So they want us to stay alive for the most part. They want some of us dead, but the state in general wants to keep its people alive and actually healthy too. The state has an interest in keeping its people healthy. And that's in fact what the Roe v. Wade decision says.
Mm-hmm. You interviewed Alec, Filthy Armenian, that's going to drop Monday. I re-listened to his episode with Nick Gillespie where he's in Vegas.
Oh yeah.
And towards the end of that, Nick Gillespie talks about Foucault being one of his influences, and how Foucault in his later life told people to start reading Mises, and
that's
told people that they had the same critiques, libertarian critiques about the state in Mises as Foucault.
That's funny because it was about 5 years ago when Foucault was kind of hot. Everybody was talking about Foucault, and a lot of people on the left were Foucauldians and referencing Foucault all the time. And Jacobin magazine came out with this big article instructing the left basically to not valorize Foucault at all, because he was a classical liberal who promoted Mises and libertarianism, which is not even totally true, but he
told his students in his later years to carefully read Mises and Hayek.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Out with you, heretic.
Yeah.
Boy, Foucault's actually, his turn in his later years was really fantastic in so many ways. And that's, by the way, when he developed his theory of biopower, which I've just been laying out here, about how the state has an absolute interest in managing our bodies, not in killing them.
Yeah. And, during COVID, Victor Agamben got in so much trouble for bringing that up, and the whole concept of biopower became problematic amongst the left because it totally critiqued the whole lockdown regime.
That's right. And this is why everybody should read Jeff Schellenberger, who was on that from the get-go. He said, this is the Foucauldian moment right here. This is what Foucault predicted would happen. Governments across the world micromanaging our bodies.
Yeah. So Glenn Greenwald over at Rumble, and we're on Rumble, and what is it? System Update, one of the best shows out there.
Yeah.
He was hammering the left and what they took these Twitter hearings as a partisan moment to encourage more censorship. So I got a clip from his show. Just
excellent.
Calling out how dumb some of the Democrats were in calling for censorship.
Yep.
The whole day was spent trying to justify Twitter censorship. Let's listen to the rest.
New York Post had this alleged information and was trying to publish it without any corroboration, without any backup information. They were trying to publish it to Twitter. Twitter did not let them, and now they were upset. I believe that political operatives who sought to inject explosive disinformation with the Washington Post couldn't get away with it. And now they're livid. And they want...
Do you see?
Yeah, so AOC still thinks that, first of all, she can't get the publication straight, and she still thinks that the Hunter Biden story is fake.
I know. When I saw this, I at first thought this was from like a year ago, but I mean, to still claim that the Hunter Biden thing was Russian disinformation or not real. I mean, Hunter Biden himself, I believe just a couple of weeks ago admitted to it, that it's all real. I really don't know what to do with that one, because AOC, I mean, she's not stupid. I mean, she does read the news. Is that just a Democrat once again pretending to not know basic facts?
She's just operating on the old script, I guess.
God damn. Yeah, that's really stunning. I mean, they need to come up with a different spin than that one, because no one's buying that anymore. I mean, we all know that it's real, and we've known for a very long time, and they're even admitting it now. Well, Jesus, what was it, NBC or CB? I think it was NBC. Couple months ago came out with a whole story saying, yeah, it's true. What? AOC, you need to read the news. She's looking good though.
Yeah. The glasses are a good look.
Yeah, she's always looking good. Although actually she's a little bit simple to me, her face, her features, but no, she's definitely pretty.
Yeah.
She's just so annoying. I can't stand it. Theater kid in action.
Theater kid. Yeah. No, this is why we have librarians, Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Everyone should watch Glenn Greenwald's show, System Update. It's on Rumble only, which is cool in itself. He does not have it. It's not on YouTube at all. And he calls Rumble the free speech alternative, which it seems to be so far. Yeah, his show is fantastic. It's been going for a couple months now. It's nightly. I think it's every weeknight. And it's very, it's Glenn Greenwald. So it's very well researched, very rigorous, relentless, packed, dense. Boy, but in terms of state security, state issues, foreign policy stuff, he's the very best. And if you watch that show on a regular basis, you will need not much else to consume on those issues.
Yeah, and he's on the freedom of speech beat very, very consistently.
Always. Yeah, he's the gold standard for those issues. Yeah. The thing is, I mean, he is only interested in those issues pretty much, or he doesn't talk much about other things. So it is, sort of narrow, but these are extremely important issues. So I'm really glad he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah. So back to the whole obscenity laws thing. After Sam Smith performed at the Grammys, there was a bunch of tweets saying that we need to bring back obscenity laws. Ali Alexander was. Did you see that performance?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Ali Alexander, that MAGA dude.
Yeah, Sammy Davis Jr.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really proud of what I put in the description, that Sam Smith's Grammy performance presented the novel idea that rock and roll is the devil's music.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly the point to make. Yes. We're going to play.
After that, it goes presented by Pfizer.
That's,
yeah.
Yeah, I saw a lot of conservatives on Twitter really being stupid about this one. First of all, there's no obscenity in it.
Well, I don't think there's any like curse words or anything, but there's
no nakedness either.
There's no nakedness, and there's no like explicit description of sexual acts, but
no.
It's a tasteful a tasteful description that you would like read in a novel about a homosexual relationship that's a secret.
Rock and roll has always been called demonic. I mean, since the 1940s, since the birth of rock and roll, people in power have called it demonic, satanic, a threat to American values and American civilization, and they've been right. It has been demonic, exactly. And we need some demonism in our world, don't we? We need people to be able to be willing to take on any norm, to challenge any norm, to be irreverent toward the norms, toward the powers that be. And this is all that is. I mean, it's actually sort of a mild version of it. The fact that there was a lot of red and a lot of like sort of references to the devil is just sort of cliched to me. But, you know, God, go look at Kiss performances from the 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, half the heavy metal bands of the 70s and 80s were doing demonic shit all the time. And I never liked that music, but I definitely appreciated that. I appreciated the rebelliousness, the sort of very base, primitive rebelliousness. I won't do what you tell me attitude, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what Sam Smith is up to here. And what's the big deal? I'm really amazed that conservatives care about this at all.
Mm-hmm. And we've been talking to some very smart artistic people recently, and talking about the subversiveness of art itself and how art can be like fundamentally conservative in how it portrays things. And you know, there's two things here. There's I do believe that there is music that is capable of conjuring up spirits and demons. Yes, that's a real thing. But also music in the West that's demonic has a tradition of following a morality play. And this song and this performance is kind of a morality play. Like, this is a man trapped in sin, seduced by the devil in hell. And yeah, he's basically saying that this urge is demonic and comes from hell and will send you to hell. Like, that's the whole point that he's portraying it as. It's a fundamentally conservative position if you actually choose to view it with an artistic and open mind.
Oh, that being gay is in itself demonic.
Yes, that the pleasure itself is a bad thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you really think Sam Smith was suggesting that? Someone who's been an out gay man for a long time?
Yeah, I don't think he's consciously being morally condemnatory about it, but I think he is playing it out, and I think getting that message from it as a viewer is not something that's far-fetched at all.
Or how about he's just sort of stating a fact, which is that, yes, according to the dominant Christian ideology of the West, yes, having sex with another man is demonic, is evil. That's right. And he's saying, well, now what are you going to do about it? Maybe, you know, yes, we're doing this stuff. And yes, you're right. It is a fundamental subversion of basic Christian norms. Now what? What do you want to do? Put us in prison? Which maybe, you know, the bars and stuff on stage maybe was suggesting that. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, if that's what he's saying, then I'm for it.
Yeah. But you know, it's complicated. And like, I know that like Alice Cooper, for example, would explicitly do stuff like that as a morality.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Alice Cooper was.
Yeah. And like, how many of these conservatives have a Slayer T-shirt in their drawer? You know, like, have we forgotten everything? You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah, a lot of conservatives many conservatives are heavy metal fans. Sort of the younger conservatives, or people who call themselves conservatives. You know, sort of with the whole Milo Yiannopoulos movement, right, of about 5 to 10 years ago, of making conservatism punk rock, making it subversive, making it rebellious, making it youthful rebelliousness. Conservatism has been that for a while because, again, the ruling class has been thoroughly liberal. And so anything that is opposed to that would be today's radicals. And so, you know, and Milo is very flamboyantly, outwardly gay and all that, and sort of, which is so bizarre. I mean, conservatives not very long ago at all were terrified of anybody being gay, and were, very disdainful of homosexuality. But there's that, and then yes, there's a lot of young, especially men, conservative men, like in the MAGA world, are huge heavy metal fans and wear T-shirts with demonic images on them, from Black Sabbath or all these bands that have been totally demonic. They need to figure this out, right? I mean, are you going to be real conservatives, or are you going to be contradictory in this way? I mean, if you're going to be a real conservative, then you can't be listening to heavy metal that's demonic or even rebellious in that way.
Okay, here's the real subversive message.
Okay.
And it's an anti-trans ideology subversive message that's in that performance. The song itself is about a married man, father with kids, going out and having a homosexual relationship for his own pleasure. Okay. Sam Smith is non-binary. I'm not sure if he is a they. He might be a they. I don't know. But he's a non-binary. So he's not a man, according to transgender ideology. And Kim Petras, although she might have been born biologically something, or the doctors might have assigned her male at birth, she is a woman, according to transgender ideology. And if you listen to those lyrics, they're both talking about being men engaged in homosexual acts, or that's the implication of the lyrics of the song. And there's like a Kim Petras line about, he comes to me because he knows that I'll keep my mouth shut, in that I'm one of the guys. I'll keep my mouth shut. Like I'm cool.
So how is it anti-trans?
Oh, because it asserts a fundamental masculinity about both characters involved in the play. As opposed to androgyny in Sam Smith and total femininity in Kim Petras. Both of them play masculine roles in how the song's played out.
Well, yeah. I'm not sure about that. but it's okay. No, I'm just thinking through this. I'm still thinking about sort of the broader implications of this issue here. So for me, what has happened in the last 10, 20, 30 years or so, or you could say it's been happening for a lot longer than that, is that the mass culture industry, the pop culture industry, or industries, in particular music, let's just say music right now, the music industry in this country and in Western Europe, has been selling out. I mean, has been, become more and more part of the dominant, the mainstream, and has been, propounding ruling class ideas, and has been remaking rock and roll basically into the opposite of what it originally was, right? I mean, pop music has been increasingly been used or made into a tool of kind of the ruling ideology. So the idea that Sam Smith's video is evidence of of demonism taking over the pop culture industry is so stupid. I can't even tolerate it. It's the opposite of what's going on. This was some harmless poking fun in the service of advancing, I think, the trans ideology, which has been, the liberals' latest tool to create victims, who need to be saved by the state.
Yeah. Well, yes. But it's like a radio hit for kind of all of America to listen to. And like, that's the thing, is like, they are advancing the trans thing by being transgender and explicitly pushing that. Sure. But I think the character of the art points to a fundamental gender essentialism because it's a good piece of art.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, you think they're being gender essentialist?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't quite see that.
Okay.
But you could be right. I have COVID.
Yeah.
And I'm not thinking clearly.
Yeah. 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 the art provides them a landscape to play out their gender essentialist fantasies.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So Sam Smith deep down doesn't really believe any of this shit about trans stuff. He knows he's a man.
Or at least he pretends to be one for fun.
Right.
He pretends to be a man for fun.
Could be. Yeah. I like Sam. By the way, I like his music. I've always liked his song. I've liked his voice a lot. I like many of his songs. In fact, I think most of his songs that I've heard, I really like.
Phenomenally talented. Yeah.
He's the male of Adele. He's the male Adele.
Yeah. So Tim Dillon made the point that this whole subversiveness doesn't work when you're ugly, and he basically Tim Dillon called Sam Smith ugly. So, but
it's not a question of ugliness. It's more about size.
Yeah,
they're both big boys.
Yeah. And,
sorry, Sam, for calling you a boy.
And like the performance was kind of tacky and predictable. Also,
it was cliched to me.
Yeah,
it was actually almost embarrassing for that reason to me. This is like, oh, you're dressing up as the devil. Oh, well, that's been done a few billion times. What's new here? The only thing that was new is Kim Petras, the trans person, is in the performance. Okay, but there's nothing about, you can't even tell. There's no reference to trans anything, as you were saying in the song. So I don't know. Rock and roll should be demonic, don't you think?
Yeah, well, like Little Richard, right? Or Prince. A lot of American rock and rollers have this history of alternating between being demonic and being gospel singers also. Like Little Richard was a preacher for, like, he keeps alternating between I'm the gayest and blackest person you've ever met to handing all of his friends Bibles every time he sees them. And same thing with Prince and Jehovah's Witness thing. So I think that's the American way, is to break the rules and then go back to them and break them and go back. And it's fun.
Sin, redemption, sin, redemption, sin, redemption. This is the cycle of American life, right? Yeah. This is why in towns across the country, there have always been a church next to a saloon. I mean, this is what happens, right? People do stuff that they really want to do, then they feel really bad about it, really guilty about it, so they go to church to atone for it. And they keep going back and forth because they can never stop wanting to drink and have sex and party. And
that's the story of Ye as well, and that's the story of Jesus. Right. That Jesus album is especially did it in a really subversive way, where it treated like civil rights imagery as sacred.
Right.
Also. Yeah.
Yep. It's an old American pattern. Yep.
Yeah, all of them fall into it.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
guilt is powerful.
It is, man. Yeah, and you should feel it, and you should play with it, because it'll teach you a lot about yourself.
What do you mean?
Self-knowledge. What you particularly feel guilty about.
Oh yeah.
Tells you a lot about who you are.
Oh yeah.
And it's probably the thing that you're hiding from yourself the most.
Well, hang on though. I mean, it tells you a lot about who you are, but it also tells you a lot about the society you're living in. Because much of guilt is internalized shame from the culture you live in, right? Because some of these things are not shameful in other cultures, right? But in our culture, and American culture has always been highly moralistic. And so people have had a lot of reason to feel ashamed and guilty of their desires, because they're told all the time that these things are sinful. But the good news is we always have church. There's always a church nearby to go to.
Well, yeah, and that's why the Catholics are the libertines, as we've noticed. Is you can always go to confession on Sunday, no matter what you did on Saturday.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
oh yeah. In my research on Jimmy Hoffa, he was raised. Oh, he was raised near you in Indiana, actually, partly. And I did some research on his hometowns in Indiana in the 1910s and 20s, I think it was, and I think I found that there were an equal number of saloons and churches in his town. And that's very common. If you look at like Wild West towns in particular, like mining towns in the mountains and cattle towns and in the Great Plains, you find exactly the same thing. You'll find huge number of saloons, brothels, and churches all in the exact same place. it's this constant cycle many Americans have been trapped in. They just keep going back and forth between the church and the den of iniquity.
What's that? There's a Norm Macdonald joke. Why is the rope store always next to the old crickety stool store?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not my favorite way to live, and this is why I've kind of devoted my career in a sense to attacking that kind of shame and that kind of guilt, because I think we can be freer, and not just free from the constraints of the state or institutions, but free from the constraints of our own minds.
Mm-hmm. Man, I don't know where to explore that one further. And there's another clip from the Twitter hearings I really wanted to show.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So this was really illuminating for me. This is where these hearings worked at their best.
You know, that you will be all held accountable. Miss Gaddy, are you still on CISA's Cybersecurity Advisory Council? Yes or no? Yes, I am. Okay. For those who have said that this is a pointless hearing, and I just want to let you guys all know, we found that Twitter was indeed communicating with the federal government to censor Americans. I'd like to remind you that this was all in place before January 6th. So to say that these mechanisms weren't in place and to make it about January 6th, I want to let you know that you guys were actually in control of all of the content, and clearly we have proof of that. Yeah,
so if you missed it, basically Vijaya Gadde is still employed by the federal government.
Oh.
For CISA, yeah.
Oh, I did miss that. She's currently employed by the federal government?
Yeah, she just admitted to it. CISA.
What is that?
That is the cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency. They do cybersecurity for every .gov website, pretty much.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so that raises a sort of a very closely connected issue, which not nearly enough people are talking about. I've been wanting to report on this for about 2 years since I first found out about it. There is this huge network of misinformation and disinformation, basically think tanks that are almost all housed in universities. Many of the big ones are at Stanford and MIT, but damn near every major university in this country has some sort of misinformation institute in it. And what they do is they hire these young academics to make recommendations to the federal government as to how to censor social media in general. And no one's talking about this. And a lot of their recommendations become policy or in fact law. And, you know, this comes out of Russiagate. A lot of this stuff is aimed directly at, you know, alleged Russian misinformation. And then of course, COVID was another big one. They gained a lot of traction with that, you know, so they were the justification for their existence is all the misinformation, alleged misinformation around COVID, you know, which was of course life-threatening. And so that you needed action. But these universities, boy, we need to be marching on the universities because they are fostering and housing and funding these censorship think tanks, basically. And that's probably similar to what Gotti is on.
Mm-hmm. Side note, South Park stopped being good about it might have been like 2014-ish, 2013, I forget. It was when they did an episode about WikiLeaks, and they were totally on board with misinformation. They were trying to do like a both sides thing, and they were totally anti-Julian Assange and saying that he's spreading misinformation. And early on, somebody got to them and compromised them on that issue, that there's this thing called misinformation and that letting out documents is a bad thing and that we need experts to tell us what's correct and what's not. It's a very subversive thing.
South Park?
Yeah, South Park fell for that.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That's the end of the world as we know it.
Mm-hmm.
If South Park is doing that, they've always been a beacon of liberty.
Yeah, in the 90s and 2000s, but they got old and they got kids and they probably got too ingrained in Hollywood like everybody else. And they've been pretty establishment for a while now.
When I had a kid, I got more radical.
Really? Really?
And as the older I've gotten, the more radical I've gotten. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I was definitely less radical on a bunch of issues 20 years ago before my son was born. Oh yeah. I don't know what that is. I'm just weird, but I know a lot of people, they get more conservative when they have kids, but I don't see why that's necessarily the case. Why that has to be.
Last week we talked about Jordan Peterson. He talked about the tyrannical feminine urge. I think a lot of these men online going after groomers in this groomer discourse is them enacting a tyrannical mother feminine urge. They're being mama bear to the kids that they don't have, and they're being the protector a lot.
Or it's just cheap virtue signaling for the right. Don't you think?
Yeah,
I mean, but look how I'm going to kill pedophiles worse than anybody. I'm the most anti-pedophile person in the world. I mean, it's just like being the biggest anti-racist in the world on the left, right? It's a huge, feather in your cap to be seen as like the big anti-racist.
Yeah, but like with the anti-racist people, same thing. They see minorities as victims that need to be protected, and these conservatives see these little children as victims that need to be protected. And if anything should come between Mama Bear and her cubs, that's when Mama Bear freaks out, and that's when Mama Bear will rip you limb from limb. Or yeah.
I am the greatest protector of others.
Yes,
they're all claiming that on the left and the right. By the way, have you noticed? It seems to me like the whole anti-racism thing has kind of died out a bit. I mean, you don't see this much anymore. People getting accused of racism.
Yeah. I think anti-racism jumped the shark.
Yeah.
And a lot of woke liberals, well, it's gotten out through like Netflix, TV shows, and other shit that like if you're too woke, that's a bad thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, like the white lady trying to be woke and trying to sincerely be anti-racist who gets scolded by the frizzy-haired mulatta who is a professor or lawyer. That is played out on a lot of TV shows because the white lady is trying too hard. I think that has gotten a lot of anti-racism to calm down.
It really seems like it's died out. I just you don't see it much anymore. And everybody's focused on groomers, or whether there's groomers or not, but you don't see these accusations of racism. You also don't see accusations of rape anymore. The Me Too thing has also died out. I guess women are no longer getting raped.
Yeah. Well, ever since back to the anti-racism thing, ever since Joe Biden got elected, Trump is out, so racism doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, is that what did it?
Yeah. We had a Nazi in power for 4 years, and then the redeemer of this country, the great white hope, Joe Biden, took over, and now racism doesn't exist anymore. We all cleansed ourselves of that horrible 4-year history where racism existed in America.
Right. And of course, if you're black, you're going to vote for Joe Biden, as he said.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, no, the guy who locked up everybody's uncle. Every black person's uncle.
Yeah. Speaking of that, the State of the Union happened. Did you watch it?
I mean, by the way, that's almost not an exaggeration. I think.
Oh yeah.
I would bet you it's a minority of black people in this country do not have a relative who's ever been in prison. I'm sure a majority of black people in this country have at least one relative who's been in prison. I think that's right.
With federal minimums because of Joe Biden's 94 crime bill.
In large part because of Joe Biden, yeah.
Yep.
That's right.
But yeah, the Hoteps were covering the State of the Union live, and they were saying Joe Biden looked like he's about to drop a new crime bill mixtape.
He needs one.
Yeah.
Let's bring that back, Joe, when you wanted to kill all the drug dealers.
But did you actually watch the whole thing? Because I bring that up because the Grammys and the State of the Union used to be these big cultural touchstones that everybody sat down in front of their TV and watched, and it doesn't seem like that anymore.
No, I didn't have the patience for it. I watched some of it. I watched the heckling. There was a pretty amazing moment where he starts going back and forth with the audience, which is the Congress, and arguing about the debt and the deficit, right? And then that's when Marjorie Taylor Greene shouted out, "You're a liar." But before then, there was this back and forth between him and the crowd, which I've never seen in any kind of presidential address, right? Where he's arguing with them. He says, "Check it out. Well, take a look at it. It's true."
Yeah, I've got that moment. I've got that moment pulled up. It was well, it was wild to watch because Joe Biden, a senile, dementia-ridden old man who is a hologram, has the confidence to essentially go off script.
Right.
So
I gave him a little credit for that. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And then this was over the issue. He talked about the debt earlier, and then he tied that into Social Security, and that's when the Republicans got real ornery.
Instead of making the wealthy pay their fair share, some Republicans Some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority. Let me give you, anybody who doubts it, contact my office. I'll give you a copy. I'll give you a copy of the proposal. That means Congress doesn't vote. Well, I'm glad to see you. No, I tell you, I enjoy conversion. You know, it means if Congress doesn't keep the programs the way they are, they'd go away. Other Republicans say, I'm not saying it's a majority of you. I don't even think it's even a significant, but it's being proposed by individuals. I'm not politely not naming them, but it's being proposed by some of you. Look, folks, the idea is that we're not going to be moved into being threatened to default on the debt if we don't respond.
Oh, there was another moment too, where he was talking about oil and saying that we need our own oil and we need to get off of OPEC, and because we'll need oil for at least 10 more years, and all the Republicans laughed.
He's giving us 10 years.
Yeah.
Oil. That's nice. Yeah. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just, boy, the federal government has lost its self-respect, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, Trump really broke everything in terms of decorum.
Yes.
You know, you just did not see anything like this whatsoever in Congress or in the federal government before Trump. You just did not. I mean, I think there was the moment, I guess, when some congressperson yelled at Obama that he was a liar, right? That was it, though.
Yeah, you're a liar. And then Obama just like a black parent, like gave him the dead eye and moved on.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think this moment happens if like Nancy Pelosi doesn't rip off Trump's speech like she did last year or 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess it's a good thing. I mean, I'd rather they be loose and open and freewheeling so we can really see who they are.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also slightly discomforting because these are the people who control stuff, and they control the biggest arsenal in the history of the world, etc. And they control the biggest prison system in the history of the world. And they have, control the biggest state in the history of the world. So if they lose their minds and become truly anarchic and spontaneous like this, any one of us could get punished or hit in some way by the government at any moment, right? It's becomes completely capricious, and that's scary. So I don't know what I want here. I mean, I like being able to see them for who they are. I like to see them being themselves in this way, but I also want them to be somewhat controlled because they have so much power.
Yeah. I don't like the mob groupthink mentality thing that happens too. That's disconcerting because like some Republicans do want to cut Social Security, or at least I'd hope they do, because I hate that program,
Mm-hmm.
Right. I got in not a lot of trouble, but I was trolling some people on Twitter. I think it was Kim Klacik, said Biden still hasn't named the Republicans who want to cut Social Security. And I said, well, I want to cut Social Security. And then I got a ton of hate in the comments, and I was added to a bunch of lists by some Democrats and Republicans.
You've been added to a list because you want to cut Social Security?
Yeah, Medicare. Yeah.
Wow. Well, you think you'd be better at investing your own money?
Yes.
Than the federal government? Really? What makes you think that? The government's great with money.
Yeah,
they manage their money very well, don't they?
I'd rather spend it on literally anything else. Cocaine, anything. Yeah.
I could use some cocaine because I have COVID. It's great for that, by the way. It just keeps you awake, keeps you going.
Yeah. Helps your nasal passages and helps you breathe.
Sure.
Yeah. And
And
that is medical advice. This is a medical advice show. Just for anybody. Yeah.
Cocaine does have its uses. Trust me. It can be a good thing to use cocaine.
Yes. And we are encouraging everybody out there right now to use it. Yes.
YouTube. Come on in, YouTube. We're done now. Forget it.
But and our financial advice segment is next too.
Right? Yeah, boy. Yeah. You don't want financial advice from me, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
See, I do want the federal government to control my money because I know I will lose it all.
Yeah, yeah. But all these Republicans who are like so anti-socialism, right? There was just a resolution to denounce socialism in the House that passed, right? So all these Republicans to denounce socialism will protect Social Security and Medicare with their lives, and it's the third rail that you cannot talk about, and everybody will throw shade at the other side for threatening Social Security and Medicare.
It is amazing. I mean, these are like the cornerstones of the American welfare state, Social Security and Medicare. And you're right, the Republicans have been absolutely in lockstep defending those programs since the get-go. I mean, even Reagan, in fact, I think Reagan sort of essentially announced that's where we don't go. You know, we're for smaller government, but we're not going to ever touch those things, you know, the fundamental welfare state. And of course, Nixon, just before Reagan, he expanded the welfare state tremendously, more than even Johnson did. So the Republicans are, not that most people watching this will know exactly what I'm talking about, but most Republicans are full of shit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, although I get, and then MAGA, the new MAGA crowd, they too, I think, don't want to mess with Social Security and Medicare because they're for a welfare state. They're nationalist populists. They're domestic policy ideas are very similar to Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. Thomas Sowell had a great point about Social Security in that it's a program that if you really are a populist and you really care about the working class, it hurts the poor more than anybody else because they pay into it for most of their lives. They live not as long as everybody else, and they could actually use their money when they're younger. Yeah, you know.
Wow. Mm-hmm. I just off topic sort of, but I just saw that Thomas Sowell supported the Iraq War.
Really? I didn't see. Oh, was that through Walter Block, right?
Yeah. When I interviewed Walter Block, I saw, he didn't say it in my interview, but he said it in another interview that I was researching of him. And he said that, and he said that Thomas Sowell and Walter Williams were warmongers. And I said, what? And I checked it out. And yes, sure enough, I put it on Twitter, and then a bunch of people, including Tho Bishop, said, who, by the way, I think is he now like officially work for the Republican Party of Florida? Is that?
Well, yeah, he's the Mises Caucus of the Republican Party.
But does he have some formal position with?
I don't know if he's formally has a job with the Republican Party or if he's run for office or anything, but he's definitely caucusing the Republicans. He cares about the Republicans. Yeah.
You know, yeah. And I like Tho a lot, and I think he's hella smart. But and he was like, yep, sure. And he had the receipts. He showed me immediately. Yep, Thomas Sowell supported the Iraq War, as did Walter Williams, which is really disappointing.
Yeah, they are all Hoover Institute guys. So yeah, the Hoover Institute will get pretty libertarian on economics, but they will kind of be lockstep with the bipartisan foreign policy consensus a lot of times.
Yep. Yeah. So, but the nationalist populist, the MAGA position on welfare and the welfare state, you know, it converges with the left-wing populists. They have very similar ideas. Same with immigration. You know, Bernie and Trump have very similar ideas on immigration. Bernie's not allowed to say it anymore, but for decades he was, you know, we know this, he was saying that open borders was a right-wing conspiracy to flood the country with cheap labor and undercut the power of trade unions. Now, that's not exactly what Trump says, but it's pretty close. But their positions are the same, which is that the border should be tightly controlled and the immigration should be tightly restricted.
Mm-hmm. That is your second most controversial position, is open borders.
Mine?
Yeah.
Oh, I've got many. Are you kidding?
Yeah, but that's the one that you get, like, when people hate you, they always bring up the open borders thing.
Oh,
yeah.
Wait till they read what I have to say about American slavery.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then wait till they see what I have to say about the Holocaust. But
yeah,
but yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot lately. Actually, it's tricky because there's a report out about what's going on in Sweden. I don't know if you saw this, but apparently drug gangs are going crazy, killing each other in Sweden right now, and it's all immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
And there's apparently just a huge spike in violent crime in Sweden. All of it, or almost all of it, coming from immigrants. And it's tricky. I mean, for those of us who are open borders advocates, you know, how are we going to respond to that? I mean, to me, the migrant crisis in Europe was absolutely the product of government interventions, in particular wars in the Middle East, in particular Syria. I mean, the war in Syria was the major cause of the migrant crisis. So it caused most of the people to seek refuge in and to move to Europe. And then also granting them welfare benefits, state welfare benefits, which again, if you're open borders, you don't have to be for that. And I'm not for that. So if you can, if the government does less, there will be less of a migration crisis. If it stops causing wars that force people to leave their homes and stops giving out welfare to people, especially people who are immigrants, we won't have this crisis. Anything like it. I mean, those are the reasons people are, and a lot of
the old right position.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's not, we can still resolve that problem if we're open borders people.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. I want to talk about the big foreign policy story, is the Seymour Hersh
yes, good
story. And let me show you. So the first story that pops up on Yahoo News about this, when you Google Seymour Hersh Nord Stream pipeline, is this Business Insider article. And as you can see, the headline is, "The claim by a discredited journalist that the U.S. secretly blew up the Nord Stream pipeline is proving to be a gift to Putin." And then you can see there's a second headline, if you read closely on the tab: "Russia gleefully endorses Hersh claim that U.S. blew up Nord Stream." So,
discredited journalist Seymour Hersh. Exactly how is he discredited?
Mm-hmm.
So people should look, if you don't know. I mean, Seymour Hersh, his first claim to fame, but there have been many claims to fame, was he was the one who exposed the My Lai massacre for what it was in the Vietnam freaking war in the 1960s, late 60s, early 70s. And he's done a lot since then too. One major story after another he's broken that has exposed the nefarious deeds of our government. In particular in foreign policy. I don't know how he was ever discredited. I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, the New York Post puts their headline as "Pulitzer winner Seymour Hersh." Yeah,
right.
So,
and I did see on Wikipedia that his entry, the Wikipedia entry for Seymour Hersh, I think starts now. It was just edited too, like yesterday. It calls him a conspiracy theorist in the first sentence. No, he's not a conspiracy theorist. Trust me. I mean, he's the one. I remember many years ago when the Syrian civil war was starting. He had this piece out that got suppressed. It wasn't published by any of the outlets, but you could read it, in which he showed that the U.S. government was funding Al-Qaeda in Syria, branches of Al-Qaeda in Syria. And it was like, what? Hersh is a freak. He's crazy. What is he talking about? Sure enough, I mean, that is now common knowledge that the United States did, in fact, fund wings of Al-Qaeda in Syria. So that's Seymour Hersh, who's now 85. Wow, yeah, pretty impressive. Well, okay, so the Nord Stream story, I mean, come on, like, it's just how would it be possible to construct an argument that it was anyone other than the United States that did it? It's just, this is when it gets really Orwellian, and I just feel like the gaslighting is on such a level that I don't even know how to respond to it. I mean, gas pipeline from Russia to Europe, to Germany specifically, gets blown up. It's the Russians' own pipeline with their own gas that they want to sell, of course, to Europe. But it's claimed that they did it themselves, when you have multiple major State Department officials and Biden himself saying before the war even started, that Nord Stream had to go. Victoria Nuland, Tony Blinken, Biden himself said, we've got to get rid of Nord Stream. They made promises that Nord Stream would cease to operate if Russia invaded Ukraine. And then we also know that the U.S. had multiple ships, naval ships, in the Baltic Sea, right near where Nord Stream was blown up at the time. Well, who else would have done it? I mean, we know this is it was a major benefit to the Americans to do this, because it makes it impossible for the Western Europeans to ever have a rapprochement with Russia, to ever resume trade with Russia, at least for gas and oil. And so Hirsch comes out and basically just provides some evidence for what seemed to be obvious to most of us. I really, I have to strain hard to even think of an argument for why Russia would have done this, or why anyone else would have done this. But again, it also speaks to how incredibly debased Western Europe is to America. That Germany didn't even protest, didn't even ask for an investigation of it. In fact, a lot of the Green Party in Germany, which runs their foreign policy, unfortunately, they celebrated it. They said it was a great thing that Nordstream got blown up. Of course the US did it.
Yeah. The big thing about Russia is, like, if they really wanted to not use the pipeline, they could just turn off the flow of gas. It's
right.
their pipeline.
Click. Right. It's done. I mean, what? And again, why would they? They have absolutely no reason. They've always wanted to sell gas to Europe, to the rest of the world. And that it was a major hit to their own economy to have Nord Stream blown up.
Yeah. So in this article, it has that quote from Biden: "If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again, then there will no longer be a Nord Stream 2, Biden said on February 7th, 2022.
Right.
We will bring an end to it."
That's right. That's February 7th. That's 2 weeks before the invasion.
And then that exchange, some journalist asked, "How? What does that mean?" And Biden's just like, "Trust me, we'll end it."
Yeah, we will bring an end to it. Okay. I take him at his word. Tony Blinken said almost exactly the same thing. Victoria Nuland said exactly the same thing. And also, according to Hirsch, the planning to blow up Nord Stream began in the fall, like 2 or 3 months before the invasion.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. It's amazing that the US do that and get away with it.
Yeah, that's the thing, is, like, by the time Biden says that, there has to already be plans in place.
Can you imagine if Russia or China or any foreign government blew up a gas pipeline supplying the United States? Can you imagine if there was like some undersea pipeline for the United States and China or Russia blew it up secretly? I mean, this government, man, it's gotten out of control. We need to rein it in.
Yeah. I want to end on a positive note.
Okay.
So I'm going to show you a love story.
I love those.
Yeah. A beautiful innocent love story on TikTok. This is Julia B. She is a Brazilian pop star. Very, very famous, has a lot of followers. And she has a very public relationship. And this is what she decided to share on TikTok.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
By the way, Portuguese is the language of love, not French.
It is.
Me diz que ainda bate rápido seu coração quando escutar meu nome, baby. Será que se eu viajar no tempo ainda dá pra ser seu grande amor? Voltar pra aquele dia em setembro, debaixo do cobertor, dividindo os nossos sonhos mais imensos. Eu deixava a sua estrela me guiar. Será que se eu viajar 3h33, cheguei no aeroporto. Tempo de eu te amar. Tempo de eu te amar. E se eu te ligasse, te falasse?
So, do you know who the man is?
No.
Lucky man?
No.
I'll give you a hint. His first name is Connor. Ring any bells?
McGregor.
No. Last name Kennedy.
Oh no.
Yep.
You mean, and he's an American Kennedy?
He's son of Robert Kennedy Jr., grandson of Robert Kennedy.
No.
Yep. Look it up. I'm not making this up.
But Bobby Jr.'s based now. Why would he be sending a kid to Ukraine?
Bobby Jr. is based on one aspect of COVID policy. He is not fully based on everything all the time.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure that his son, who may not be so close to his father and maybe, I don't know, compromised from other members of his family, or I don't know. Maybe he's acting completely independently, as Kennedys do.
Sometimes.
Yep.
Yep.
But yeah.
God, what a family.
Yep.
They get everywhere, don't they?
They do.
They even in the pants of Brazilian pop stars.
Mm-hmm.
My goodness. So he's American, fully American, and
American. Yep.
And did you say his name is? He's Robert too. He's also Robert.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Mary Kennedy. Remember them? He's their son.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
God damn. I hate that family. Always have.
Yeah.
Even when Bobby Jr. did good work on COVID and the vaccines, I still didn't trust him. So thank you for pointing out that I was right.
Well, yeah. If you take our JFK course at unregisteredacademy.com, you will come to the conclusion that Thad is the one who killed the Kennedys.
I tried.
Yeah.
I wasn't born yet, really, for Jack, and I was only 3 for Bobby, but I still wanted to. Even when I was a toddler, I wanted to take him out. Yeah, no, I mean, they're arguably, certainly among the most malign families in modern American history. Responsible for a lot of terrible stuff that happened, and especially in foreign policy. Really hardcore militarists, war hawks, Cold Warriors, which we can go into later. But, it's, and so the tradition continues, apparently. This guy goes and volunteers as a mercenary for Ukraine, the most corrupt government in Europe that has a lot of Nazis working for it and fighting for it. And the whole thing is despicable and disgusting. Not to mention, actually, you know what the most outrageous thing is? People are completely unaware of the immediate cause of this war, which was the attacks on the people of Donbass for seeking independence and seeking to align with Russia, which, overwhelmingly the people of Donbass have always wanted. It's, it's their right of self-determination. And then once they did that in 2014, Ukraine sent in some Nazi brigades from their army and surrounded the towns in the Donbass and started shelling them night and day and killing civilians and children and people walking home from work on the street, getting blown up. Thousands of civilians have been killed in Donbass. And I feel terrible for those people more than anyone else in this conflict. And no one in the Western media ever mentions it. The Western media never mentions what happens in the Donbass or what has happened in the Donbass for the last 8 years. So this guy was going to participate in the oppression of those poor people. Is how I see it.
Yeah. How crazy is that? Like the conspiracy theorists are onto something here in that, like, this guy's entire existence is a psyop, essentially. Like, for a lot of people don't really consume the news, and it's really hard to pay attention to it. And it's something that is very bad for your mental health to be constantly up on the news. So if you're just following your favorite Brazilian pop star and you see that, oh, her boyfriend went out for Ukraine and here's this lovely little Pixar movie about how they got back together for one day in Paris, you would be totally on board with the Ukrainians like everybody else.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And you would just, and you've heard that Putin might be homophobic and got Trump into office. So he's a bad guy, and that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
We're good. Now we'll send our sons to go fight and die in Ukraine. Why not?
But this is like real Project Mockingbird level stuff.
Yeah. God, he's a Kennedy. Wow.
Yeah.
Good catch, man. I didn't even hear about that.
I know. I saw that little thing, and then I saw somebody quote tweet it and say, "Oh, RFK's grandson," and I'm like, "No way!" And yep, I'm not making this up.
Cute couple.
Definitely
cute couple.
Yeah, dude, it really makes me want to join the Democratic Party. It really, really does, man.
Yeah. There's still so many people, libertarians and leftists both, my people, who still think John F. Kennedy was a good guy who was a peacenik. It's so gross. His whole family, he invented the Green Berets, for God's sake.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. And, just like everybody else, I do have a price. I'm just letting the CIA, whoever's listening right now, I do have a price for me to say whatever you want me to say. And that price is a Brazilian pop star.
Who looks like that.
Yeah.
It's pretty cute.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Good Lord. Lula, do you want to talk about, we can talk, Lula did just, what did he do? He just blocked, right. I think he just banned the sale of weapons to Ukraine.
Really?
Brazil. Something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Lula's been quite good. Both he and Bolsonaro have agreed on Ukraine. They've been essentially on Russia's side because they're members of BRICS.
Pretty interesting time for that TikTok to go viral, huh? In Brazil.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Yeah.
There you go. Oh God, mm-hmm. Nice one. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a psyop for you. Yeah. I'm pretty sure he just did that. He's been really good on this stuff. It's interesting because, the Democratic Party, the Biden administration is pro Lula. But as I said, I think last time we were here, it's amazing that he's getting away with that. I would imagine that eventually the Biden administration is going to put the screws on Lula and tell him to toe the line, or else they're going to lose all their foreign aid. But we don't know. I don't know. We'll see. I'm really glad to see it. I have issues with Lula on many things, but on this, he's been fantastic. Mm-hmm. And he sees that war for what it is.
Yeah. Latin American politics are so messy because unless the leader was directly installed by the United States government, they don't like the United States.
That's right. Mm-hmm. For some good reasons historically.
Yeah.
Yankee go home. Yeah, the United States has been invading Latin American countries since they could in the 19th century. As soon as they had a Navy and a Marine Corps able to do it, they've been invading and attempting to control everything below the southern border. Everything from Mexico to Tierra del Fuego, the United States has sent troops in at some point or another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the United States is in a weird spot with Brazil because they were so anti-Bolsonaro, but yeah, Lula conveniently got back in, but Lula's not on board, and Lula has his fair share of problems.
It will truly be interesting to see what they do on that.
Yeah,
if they will continue to allow him to be anti-Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's just and a member of BRICS even more momentously. A founding member of BRICS. So Lula is not playing their foreign policy game the way he's supposed to.
Yeah, and the story, you can't color revolution that, after everything that happened with Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro used to be the poster child of everything wrong with the world, essentially.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you notice that how he was presented to the normie liberal audience here. Bolsonaro's main thing was that he was homophobic.
Mm-hmm.
That's what same with Putin. That's the first thing they put out. When they want regime change in some other country, the first thing they do is show that leader is homophobic, which in the case of Bolsonaro is true.
Yeah.
But again, who cares if some other, foreign leader doesn't like gays?
Yeah, you've been criticizing the right for the resurgence of homophobia, but there is a sense of anti-imperialism in their homophobia that should be commended.
Yes, globo homo is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It is a thing. They've been using the rainbow flag and LGBT politics for many years. Hillary Clinton started it when she was Secretary of State, conditioning foreign aid on support for LGBTQ issues. Started in Africa, Angola. I remember that in Angola when she was Secretary of State. Angola is notoriously homophobic as a government and as a society. And there was a big foreign aid package that she presented to them and said, you're going to get this if you have a pro-gay law or you repeal the anti-gay law, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know exactly how that shook out, but that's been a weapon. It's been a weapon they've used since gay marriage, basically, since gay marriage legitimized homosexuality in American culture. It's quite amazing that they've been using that as the wedge issue in foreign policy. So, and same with Putin. I've said this many times, the first thing your typical liberal housewife in America knew about Vladimir Putin was that he hated gays.
Mm-hmm. And the global homo thing is not homosexuality, it's homogeneity.
Yes.
They want everybody to be the same.
That's right. Right. Globalized culture.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And it's gay marriage. It's globalized. Everybody gets domesticated.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Well put.
Do you think I've been sharper this week? Do you think I've been a little bit more on my toes?
Well, it's because you don't have COVID.
Yeah, and I've been taking Magic Mind. But
which
for
cures cures COVID too.
It does cure COVID. As a medical expert, I'm telling you that this, if you buy this, it will cure COVID.
If not, it'll make you feel really good while you have COVID. It's true. Yeah. You want to say a little something about Magic Mind?
But the effects do kick in after a couple weeks. It gets better after a couple weeks. You know, the first day we live in such a throwaway culture where you take like 5-hour energy or you take Monster Energy and you just want to be jacked and ready to go for the day. But like, if you want to be sharp, you need to like consistently take a supplement, a regimen. And Magic Mind does that really, really well. And after a couple weeks, it gets a lot better.
It's totally true. Yeah. And it's got matcha in it. So the effects of that caffeine is much more gradual. So you don't get like big spikes in cortisol. You don't get heart racing. But you feel that just right amount of stimulation. And it lasts a very long time also throughout the day. And then it has all these nootropics that help with cognitive focus, etc. Yeah, I love it. I take it every morning, or I drink it every morning because it tastes really good. It's a lovely shot of liquid, and they just revamped the taste, which I didn't even think they needed to do, but it's quite delicious. And you can also have it with your morning coffee, or like me with my morning kratom. That's my morning routine now is kratom and Magic Mind, and I truly couldn't recommend anything stronger for more highly for your morning routine.
Yeah, if I want to be wired and just do like busy work, I drink coffee. And if I want to be focused and like actually form thoughts and sentences together, I drink Magic Mind.
I just smoke crack when
I smoke crack. Also medical advice.
God,
we are doctors.
I love speed so much. I do.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So after every Unreported, we go to Unregistered Live, which is this weekly Zoom meeting with all the patrons of Unregistered. And if you would like to join us and hang out, it's really fun. Every week after Unreported, go to patreon.com/unregistered, and you'll see the URL for the meeting is right there, and you can hang out with us. And that starts in 1 minute.
If it is possible, we do get even looser.
We definitely do. Yeah. And it's unrecorded, so you don't have to worry about that. So people feel very loose and free to speak, as do I. And I sometimes get a little bit of trouble on there. So it's a ton of fun every Thursday. Go to patreon.com/unregistered. Join us.
Yep. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Michael.
Yep. Awesome. See you there. See you on the other side.
See you on the other side.
Yeah.
Bye.